machine can do the work of 50 ordinary men. No machine can do the work of one extraordinary man. With that being said, a very good afternoon to one and all present here. Before we get started, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Ramya, Assistant Professor from the Department of Human Resource Management, and I will be your host for today's program. It's my great pleasure and the first and foremost duty to welcome all the dignitaries, faculties, and participants from various institutions for a one-day national level webinar on keeping the human in human resource alive in a technology-enabled world. It's my privilege to extend a warm welcome to our presenter, Ms. Debjani Roy, Chief HR Officer at Mind Your Fleet, Assistant Faculty of Business Management, School of Business, Maudi University. Before we commence, the feedback form will be available in the YouTube chat box at the end of the session. No request to complete and submit the form before today 6 p.m. Later, the form will be deactivated. The e-certificate for participation will be sent to register email immediately. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. With this quote, may I request Dr. R. head of the department, to deliver the welcome address. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Ramya. The greatest asset of a company is its people, laymen. With this wonderful quote, a very good afternoon and a very warm welcome to one and all for this webinar on keeping the human in human resource alive in a technology-enabled world. On behalf of the Department of Human Resource Management, Dr.M.G.R. Educational and Research Institute, University. A cheerful welcome to all the participants. Heartfelt gratitude to our founder Chancellor, Dr. A.C. Shanmugam, and to our Honorable President, Engineer A.C.S. Arun Kumar, for their wonderful motivation and support to us in all the ways. Hearty welcome to our wonderful speaker of the day, Ms. Debjani Roy, Chief HR Officer, Mind Your Fleet, Adjunct Faculty of Business Management, School of Business, Modi University. She is a wonderful speaker with a versatile knowledge in various areas. Besides a speaker, she is an entrepreneur, advisor, and so on. Hearty welcome and happy to have you today with us, ma'am. It's my pleasure to welcome and thank all the executives, deans, department heads, faculty members, research scholars, and students for this webinar. Hearty thanks to our joint registrar of Phase 2 campus, Mr. Prabhu, Dr. A.R. Arunachalam, Dean Academics, and Dr. K. Senthil Kumar, Dean of Administration, for their continuous support to us in all the ways. Hearty welcome and thanks to our wonderful technical support team, Mr. Ganesh Babu and Ms. Niveda Rajit, for their wonderful support in making this program a grand success. In the midst of an ongoing pandemic, HR technology continues to serve as a key asset for HR leaders. The ability to disseminate information to a remote workforce is made easier when the proper digital communication channels are in place. Technology has driven transformation in the business world many times over. In the 21st century, the explosion of computing devices and the pervasiveness of internet has increased that impact of technology exponentially. Now, no business can even think of functioning without the use of computer technology. This impact is seen in nearly all areas of business, including human resources, where technology continues to have a significant impact on HR practices. Whether it is recruitment, communication with different stakeholders, performance measurement, or data security, technology is transforming each and every area of HR function used more effectively than before. The increase in the use of automation tools and cloud solutions is freeing up human resources from doing mundane tasks and shifting their role to strategy building and execution. The use of technology in easing time-consuming tasks such as tracking employee attendance, work performance, patterns now allows HR focuses on increasing engagement with employees, productivity, and aligning the human sides of the organizations with business goals. The 21st century is the age of technology. Smart living is not just another fancy term, as our lives are continuously impacted by the permeating embrace of new technologies such as artificial intelligence, analytics, Internet of Things, machine learning, and more. Our smartphones know more about us than we can remember. It knows where you went to shopping last year, what you purchased, what is the date of purchase, everything. So, when such is the power of technology, is it possible to remain insulated from its effects as a human resource professional? Not even remotely so. Even though technology is dominating without human, nothing is possible. Human beings have to be kept alive as human in order to succeed. To make know how to keep the human in human resource alive in this technology enabled world today, we have a wonderful speaker, Deep Jani, with us today. Hope this session will be an enriching session. Without taking much time, once again I welcome you all. Corona has not yet gone. Omicron has started. So kindly follow all the necessary precautionary measures. Stay home, stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you for the warm welcome address, ma'am. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to interaction. I now call upon Mrs. Niveta Rajit, Assistant Professor from the Department of Human Resource Management, to introduce our eminent chief guest. Over to you, madam.
Thank you, Mom. To be inspired is great. To be an inspiration is an honor. With these warm words, it's a great pleasure to introduce our guest of honor, Miss Devjani Roy, who is a human resource and L&D professional with more than 25 years of rich experience in corporate. And she is also known in the industry as a truly transformational HR stalwart with a career profile to match. Our speaker is a postgraduate in management studies from FMS Delhi University with HR and L&D certifications under her belt. Ms. Devjani charted her career across organizations such as NALCO, HCL Tech, Bentley Systems, SRL Diagnostics, which is a Fortis Group, amongst others. She was the last Chief HR Officer of CHRO of SRL Diagnostic for around 4.5 years. Before she called it quits from a full-time HR career in the year 2019. A resource person has awarded many times during her career for her reputation as an exemplary professional in the HR field. Our speaker today believes in giving back as much as possible as a coach, counselor, mentor for or to those who are in need. Currently, Madam runs her boutique HR advisory firm, Wind Beneath the Wings Venture LLP, as founder and CEO. She is also a CHRO in advisory capacity of a startup, Chromosome Software Private Limited, known by the brand name Mind Your Fleet. Our guest is an adjunct faculty teaching HRM and analytics in two elite business schools. She is also a strategic to uh, MSMEs, running her outsourced HR services from start to end. Last but not the least, our speaker is a strategic advisor on the academic board of multiple B&E schools, curating courses, offering workshops and boot camps to students, FTPs to faculties, and MDPs to corporate personnel. Many thanks, and I'm humbled and honored for your presence here today, madam. On behalf of our department and our university, we wish you good luck in all your future endeavors. Now the floor is all yours, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It is a great honor to be amongst such stalwarts and wonderful academia of Dr.M.G.R. University. We had been talking about my being a speaker for quite some time, and thanks to Dr. Jem and everybody associated, the day has finally arrived. Very kind words, very kind words, Niveda. Thank you for that, for that very kind introduction. Yes, I have been for about 27 years in the corporate. Started from scratch as an HR executive and climbed the ladders to reach the position of CHRO of multiple organizations, some multinationals and some Indian organizations. Apart from being on the board of directors representing HR, as a steering committee member in the last two organizations of worth. Um, it has been a very fulfilling year of 27 years, as I said. There is not a single facet of human resource that I have not dealt with. I remember the days when I started my career, it was not even called HR, it was called the personnel department. And HR was just a new name. It was considered a new buzz, a new fashion, which was coming into being because half the people could not relate to how different can human resource be to personnel management. At the end of the day, it was only about handling people. It was only about handling people, and people took their time to understand the subtle differences between the two. However, after having led such a wonderful journey across multiple organizations, about 8 of them in my 27 years, I am currently engaged with many startups in the position of advisory HR roles, where I look at strategic direction for HR and how it is to be given shape. I'm also on the board of many academic institutions, curating their courses in human resource management, as well as adjunct faculty to a couple of B schools, where I actually teach leadership as well as HR analytics. So this by far has been my journey, and yes, I have accumulated experiences across length and breadth of the country, across length and breadth of the function, having worked, as I said, in 8 very large and very differently styled organizations through the course of my career. Now, when Dr. Jam asked me to choose a topic, I could think of no better than to think of a relevant contemporary topic, which is keeping the human face of human resource alive in a technology enabled world. I could think of no better one because today technology not only is at our doorsteps, but very clearly taking over most parts of our professional life. I can think about, let's say, 36 months back, about 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years, when many of us, when we would be, invited to conventions and symposiums and conferences, we would stand behind the podium and in very large voice, we would talk about the digital revolution. We would talk about artificial intelligence. We would talk about, productivity led by technology. And we would talk of these primarily in a futuristic sense. We would talk about it as if there is still another 3 to 5 years before which this revolution, aided by technology, was going to come into our lives. But however, sometimes, as old people have said, and really wise men have said, man proposes, God disposes. And that's exactly what happened. When the COVID 19 broke loose for the first time in 2020 and the pandemic took over our lives, we were caught completely unawares. Never had we thought that in our own lifetime we would be able to see an unprecedented wave of developments which could almost be contemporary and be compared to nothing short of a revolution of sorts in the corporate as well as in the academic lives. People's lifestyles were changed, the societal economic laws were completely made to stand on their heads, the professions were in for a lot of trouble, the corporate world started finding its own feet in the face of completely new challenges, and the academic world also started relooking at how they needed to revamp themselves in order to meet with the new realities. Because new realities it was. This subtle pandemic made us think about living life in a very different street. Till now, we were all used to visiting offices in physical space. Suddenly, we were faced with these absolutely different option of work out of home. It's not as if we were not aware of it. We were. But work from home used to be a discretionary measure which was used only in few industries like IT and ITES, and that too, as I said, at the discretion of the management. It was never even considered to be a mainstream policy because we could never think of having large groups of working people working out of homes where everything was to be done from remote. So, whether productivity was to be measured, whether instructions were to be passed on, whether team meetings had to take place, whether communication had to be given birth to, everything was happening from digital homes. Everything was supposed to come in from remote locations. And that's how fundamentally the pandemic changed our work life balance. Okay, because primarily earlier, the life as we led it was different from the way the profession was run. One was in physical space, the other was also in physical space, and there was a clear demarcation of what we needed to do in order to keep the balance alive. But when the pandemic hit us, those lines were completely blurred. Not only that, suddenly we were all in a virtual world. Till then, we had been debating about the VUCA world and what it takes to survive, what competencies people should have in order to actually be in that particular kind of space. But suddenly, it was no longer just VUCA world. It was a world of virtual reality. Everything was suddenly online, and offline actually became the default of the day. So in a swish, just over 24 months, we started experiencing a very different set of workforce norms at the workplace altogether. And this was probably, as I said, nothing short of a revolution, because that technology, that artificial intelligence that we used to talk about almost 2.5 years back, standing in conferences, was now right there at my doorstep. It needed us to shape our competencies very differently. It needed us to learn how to get completely adapted to the new ways of work. It required agility. It required quick thinking skills. It required, more than anything else, coping mechanism to understand the depth of the changes and align your objectives and goals to the depth of what was going to be the new stay in terms of management. But in all of that, I think the fundamental question that also came about is, if we were not to be working from a physical space, could human resource, the way it is defined, the way the function is defined, survive completely being a remote reality? Or could HR reinvent itself to actually have a two-face execution strategy? One that would be aligned completely along the new technologies, which would make working in certain areas of human resource more productive, more prudent, more time and cost effective, and also definitely from a productivity measure, possibly much more telling. The other phase would be continuing to keep your HR phase alive, because this was important. You see, human resource, by virtue of its definition, requires interaction, requires a touch, feel, emotional space where every human resource, every human being who's part of the workforce in any workspace requires to sometimes reach out to another person in physical space, probably share, de stress themselves, and do multiple other things which they wouldn't want to do either online or wouldn't want to do with anybody else in the organization. And that was probably the biggest dilemma of them all. Because, on one hand, while everybody started saying, and most of the pundits especially started saying, that, you know what, HR will never be the same again. HR will start losing its human face. HR will have to now dovetail into a situation where there's going to be only policy and systems and procedures which are going to interpret things and which are going to make things work. But there are many of us who was who could not understand how HR, if it just had to perform through technology, and if it just had to make sure that execution was based on artificial intelligence and other such machine-like working, how could it fulfill its age-old important role of being somebody's agony aunt, of being somebody's listener, somebody who had the potential to just listen to another person? By virtue of that, many a times the stress and the anguish of the employee was taken care of. How could how could HR now, completely in a digital space, keep the motivational activities alive, keep the other kind of activities and initiatives alive that specifically needed until then had been used to an in-person feeling? So I have a little, I prepared a few slides. They are just very topical, because I don't think this is a this is one subject where one needs to write voluminous texts and essays. That part of the context I've already laid out, but I'd definitely like you to just have a look, a glance at some of the slides that I'm presenting, because that in itself, in very simple words, describes the age that we have now fallen apart and gives us some clues about how do we want to go from here so as to make a real difference. With your permission, I'm therefore going to start sharing my slides. Are you able to see the slides, please? Are you able to see the slides?
Yes, mom.
Niveda, are we good?
Ye- yes, mom. Everything is fine, mom. We can see
All right.
the slides.
Thank you. Thank you, dear. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
mom.
Okay, so keeping the human in human resource alive in a technology enabled world, uh, let's look at what are we talking about when we say there's a fundamental shift in the ways of working for HR post the pandemic. Now, I call it, I've given it a different name altogether. Till yesterday, if we were talking about BC and AD, the way we used to define the periods as per Christian terminology, we used to call the BC before Comini and AD as after Domini, okay, Anno Domini, which meant before Christ and after Christ. Um, However, I have changed BC and AD completely. According to me, BC is before COVID and AD is after the disruption. If we are to describe this period in BC and AD terms, then probably there's never been as fundamental a shift in workforce management the way we are experiencing it now. What is it that we are calling today's economy? We call it the gig economy. Where is this word gig coming from? In age old days in the United States of America, as well as in certain parts of Europe, especially the western part of Europe, we had these small bands of musicians. When we say small bands, these were basically street roadside musicians, okay, two or three in number, who would not be performers on large stage, but who sang beautifully, who sang in order to take your stress away, who sang because they wanted to give you some mechanism to sort of just be yourself and enjoy the sounds, a different set of sounds altogether. Now, when they got together, those two or three people, and started actually singing and performing in street corners, and the practice happens even today. If you walk down some of the Western European countries like Poland or Germany or Austria, you will find that in some of the main cities, okay, you have these towns and you have these little 3 to 4 member bands playing the local songs, as well as some very beautiful musical pieces, okay, right near the corner of streets. Those were called gigs. That was called gig singing. That's how this terminology of gig started doing the rounds. But today, when we look at what we have called the economy, the gig economy is one such fundamental change that has happened in the corporate way of life. What do we understand by gig in the professional term? The gig is not 2 to 3 people singing songs, but it's all about 1, 2, 3 minimum people, minimum number of people, sometimes is individuals, sometimes in small teams, who primarily work for staggered periods of time, picking up projects from one company to another, defining their contract in the way that contingent workers do. So rarely are they on the rolls of a company. They are not even bothered about being on the rolls of the company. They would rather be paid assets. They would rather be fundamentally good and proficient project workers who come in, who walk into a space like any office where they know that there is a project happening. They bid their cost, and if the management finds it suitable, then they earn that kind of money in a defined period of time, deliver the work to the satisfaction of the client, and then leave and hop across for the next best client. That is what is today gig economy. So compare it with what it used to be earlier, much before the pandemic. Nobody had even heard about this kind of project working. It was something that had just started being talked about, but today you find number of people who are called digital nomads. The same gentlemen are called digital nomads, who are part of the gig economy, who believe in encashing their expertise and their knowledge in return for a good amount of money when they work as project workers on different segments across the world. So that's one of the major and fundamental shift that has happened in the ways of working. And HR has to obviously provide a solution for the same. The second very large shift and very, very different kind of workforce management has been just what I had, outlined a little back. People used to be in a physical space. For me, going to office meant every morning leaving home at a certain time, driving down to my office, walking up so many steps or the lift if it would be there sometimes, and then go to my office, spend the day in physical space, working with my teams, giving instructions, helping find what kind of work ethics are being applied, measuring performance, and at the end of the day, again towards the evening, pack up and I would leave for home. That would be the definition of working at that point of time. However, what does it look like today? We still don't know. But we have different terms which are doing the rounds. So we are talking about, on one hand, remote working, which means you could be working from any part of the world, dependent on where you want to be. It could be your home, it could be a holiday retreat in another part of the country, it could be anywhere, provided you find the ways of working in that environment conducive for your own delivery. So we did not stringently work about, creating policies which would be very stringent, very factual, but it would lose the heart of the people. So this was another very, very major shift in workforce management, which was remote working. Today, again, when the pandemic is sometimes playing slow and sometimes again showing its true colors, organizations are at a crossroad. They don't know whether to take that policy of 1 year completely, because nothing seems to be changing even in the foreseeable future. But you also start thinking that there is merit in some people coming into the physical space and working as and when required. So currently, what is known as the hybrid version, which is really the most important shift which has happened in the ways for working, for HR to really comment upon and HR to really consolidate its findings upon, is the fact that we have today at work a hybrid policy, a hybrid control, which means that you have a complete onus, top to bottom, of what you will deliver. Okay, and that is good enough for the other person to actually pay you off. Okay, now the second important thing that we need to look at, it is a technology enabled world today. So everywhere you look at, it's technology, technology, and more technology. So you have internet of things, basic, then you have machine learning, and because you have machine learning, you have a whole lot of analytics. So there are recruitment analytics, there are talent management analytics, there are lateral element analytics, and plenty such more. Depending on the number of functions that HR can boast of, that many number of technology enabled world centers would probably come into being. So it's important for us to understand that irrespective of what you handle and what you are expected to become tomorrow, as tomorrow's new leadership team who are going to join in the different organizations, you will still be expected to understand technology, because technology has suddenly, from becoming just one of the people standing on the side, to being the actual strategist today, is right there trying to tell us what else to be done. And the faster we are able to pay cognizance of it, we will be better off rising up to the challenges of this new world. So, technology enabled world, starting with Bluetooth, which can actually enable the doors or open the doors of your house even when you are driving on the streets, okay, to produce the most sophisticated of weapons and the most sophisticated of solutions to social problems. This is the world we live in. The third important factor that has now come into being is cloud based HR. Now, cloud based HR, it's nothing but the entire analytical wing of HR, which used to be somebody's manual preserved till yesterday. Somebody had to wake up till the wee hours of the morning trying to fit in various kinds of data being churned out of the of HR of the evenings, and so much so that this used to be a very, very important enabler because the volumes had become extremely large to handle. So, one of the key things that happened when this new development also came into being was the fact that there were many people who were now conversant not only with the traditional way of manning HR, but also a very, very important commercial proposition of coming as well as doing something out of it based on cloud. And cloud means a completely integrated solution, okay, a complete integrated solution which makes seamless movement from one system to another, which obviously addresses every aspect of this particular phenomena. So that's butter chicken for, that's really what is the important point on current HR delivery. And all of us, all of you, my dear friends, who are not only in Dr.M.G.R. University, but also in the number of excellent places where you are coming out from, this is the kind of delivery which will be expected of you. But then hold on. That's not all. You're not only supposed to be a technology boss, you're not only supposed to be what a technology master will be able to do. You're supposed to be an amalgamation, a fine mix of both the technology, which is now becoming an enabler for your function, to what remains the core preserve of your function. Moving towards the same. Let's understand today that because of the pandemic and because of the different kind of takeaways that we have seen from the pandemic, I think nobody today talks about employee engagement because we ourselves seem to have dealt unbelievable suffering on this particular aspect. As a result of which, we should not be talking anymore of engagement, but we have to now deal with experience. And what do we understand by mostly contingent workforce? We just explained a while back, while the gig economy and the digital nomads are the ultimate examples of project work, of contingent workforce, general sustaining contingent workforce have also permeated into the systems of the policies, etc., so that they are able to coin a very different set of employee experiences rather than engagement. I will give you a little difference between the two. Engagement is basically a piecemeal objective. It is a piecemeal initiative which happens as part of a overall program and is administered through different champions. So engagement, when we used to have engagement survey, we used to have engagement scores, which used to determine whether the employees in a particular environment were happy, were satisfied, not satisfied, in which case what is to be done. You will also be expected, again, let's not miss the point, you all will also be expected to do similar exercises. Only thing is, probably not the factor of why engagement is out of sync. Engagement, therefore, used to be a piecemeal activity which used to touch some people, whereas leave other people cold. Experience, on the other hand, is a very, very personal matter. Experience is when you actually take the external environment and the external engagement patterns and make it into yourself, make it into your experience so that it never leaves you. Even then, when you continue to deliver, you will deliver not only a set of new look policies altogether, but you will also deliver what has been discussed for a long time but was not considered adequate, primarily because, by definition, uh, in terms of experience, okay, by definition, HR was never the front runners in experience. But today, it's very, very different. Today, you are not supposed to Today, you're not supposed to really look at the experiences being doled out by HR to be engagement oriented. Instead, what are they? They are experience oriented. The moment you're able to put a positive finger on somebody's experience, you will have someone more than life, someone more your force as you go along. Okay, so this is a very big change which has come into the workplace today, which is mostly by virtue of the fact that mostly the cooking or the complete workforce, the cooking of the HR machinery, as they say it, how do you cook a good HR dish? Okay, today it is mostly through contingent workforce. You don't really have a large mass of human resource sitting in a company, sitting within the glass and steel, and trying to dole out, okay, any kind of a prescription or work at at humongous levels. Okay, so this is one important thing to be kept in mind, that it's no longer engagement, it's experience. And the more we experiment with experiencing, we will realize the less will become the pain of churning over, because there's only that much that people can actually recover. Machine learning and Internet of Things coming in a big way. Okay, so today, till yesterday, let's say, we used to do attrition analysis. We used to do attrition analysis by counting the average attrition rate. How would we want to do that? We would find out the attrition of the various different departments and the divisions in the organization, find a single formula in an algorithmic way, and apply it across so that it would give us a standard figure which would be benchmarked against the different facets that are there in the market. Okay, this was the way in which machine learning and Internet of Things was coming way in areas like attrition, like areas like recruitment, where things like resumes and negligent resumes, or not so profitable resumes for an organization, could obviously be put a finger on by virtue of getting into machine learning. It was through a proper algorithm worked around what was known as artificial intelligence. That's how these very, very voluminous resumes and the very voluminous process of HR, of hiring people in this manner, also was taken care of. What otherwise was important to understand at this point of time, when machine learning and Internet of Things was already the buzzword. And this happened at the time when the pandemic was also at a high. Okay. So therefore, it just made sense that because it encouraged, or the pandemic necessitated, I won't call it encouraged, the pandemic necessitated that each one of us maintain social distancing. Each one of us stayed home more than probably venture out. Each one of us optimized our productivity, because we were all expected to have very severe and very high end kind of machineries which were going to help us in these different ways. So that is the reason why machine learning and Internet of Things was looked upon not only with a lot of encouragement by people who wanted to learn more, but with some amount of suspicion by also some of the people involved, as whether this was going to be the final straw in putting HR out. Because HR is a human dealing factor. The most important criteria for HR is the touch feel belief that it brings to either a victim, or sometimes even someone who thinks he's been victorious. Okay, this comes into being as whether they were competent enough, or whether HR feels competent enough to be able to take these on as important learnings from here onwards. Machine learning and Internet of Things coming in a big way. I repeat, no running away from it. You have to find ways in which your solutions are partially based on some of these contentions of learning analysis or Internet of Things casteism, different factors that are thrown your way to actually build your competence on. But look what's written below. And yet, so while we are saying that machine learning and Internet of Things are coming in a very big way, we're also saying, and yet, the human face of human resource continues to prevail. I will give you a small example, but a very relevant example from one of my organizations, SRL Diagnostics, where I was the CPO, or the Chief People Officer, before I finally resigned in March 2019. Now, this was a place where, by virtue of the nature of business, SRL Diagnostics had 276 diagnostic centers across the length and breadth of the country. So we had labs in Guwahati as well as in Cherrapunji in the east, and the same level and expertise was also shown in Sabarmati. Okay, now this was the imagine the breadth of it. The other labs were, however, parked in Srinagar, whereas you had many other labs in, let's say, Tuticorin down south. So you see the length and breadth of the scope. It was from Guwahati, Cherrapunji, to maybe a Srinagar, to perhaps a Tuticorin, and then maybe a Mumbai. The expense was tremendous. The expense was something which was not thought of. Okay, it was unthinkable. In a buoyant market, the very fact that one had to consider a movement taking everything along with you was definitely very painful. But then one needed to do that. And the human face of human resource continued to prevail, because without this factor, such harsh movements and such harsh anecdotes would never have survived to tell us better. Okay, so the human face of human resource continues to prevail. 276 labs across the length and breadth of the country. Every lab had problems of their own, and every lab had about 30 to 50 people, 3050. They felt that they needed to have an HR at the beck and call of theirs. So I started getting requests from each and every of the lab heads that, listen, please impress upon them that this meeting has to take place, and we need to talk about these matters so that we are able to come to a holistic solution together. But that was easier said than done, because how could you have an HR department? Despite all my efforts, an HR department had to be lean and mean by definition. So we were always less staffed and more optimally utilized. Nothing wrong in that. But only thing was that you therefore needed to define a very prolific and off the ground kind of a human resource strategy to make that really happen. Right? So here was a time where the human face of human resource needed to continue, because there were easier ways, or there were important issues that were identified which made it not so good to actually go during this period. Two places we thought earlier. Wellness today. Let me still finish and go over to wellness. The 276 labs expected an HR department, or at least an HR rep, in each of their labs, which was not possible. Going by the lean and mean principle, HR was a central function, and I had only 23 members in my team, very lean and mean. Not only were they responsible for HR in India, but they were also, as part of the CHRO, I also looked after HR for Southeast Asia. And therefore, these 23 numbers were actually supposed to do that for Southeast Asia. So when we said that no, I don't think it's feasible and it's right for the company culture to hire for every place, as and when HR suddenly decides that they needed one, it was going to be an uphill task. So one of the things that we decided was to cut out on external people. Number one, we also decided that let's try technology. Let's try technology as an enabler. We've never tried that. So we created, with our own internal IT department, chatbots. And chatbots were deployed on the terminal, 2 to 3 terminals at every lab, so that A, it could not be hacked. And second important thing is, we also needed to understand that the chatbots had to be sanctified. They needed to be brought up speed in terms of what responses they would give to people. It was a mammoth amount of back-end task altogether. When we started that program, and we had almost more than 150 chatbots, which meant that they were actually prepared to take on almost 180% of the, not even 180%, almost 200% of the total strength that we had. We were pleasantly shocked when we realized that the people were not at all friendly and not at all full of praises because of the kind of trip that we had taken. And that was one of the biggest enablers for us. You know what people said? People completely ridiculed the chatbots. They said, we don't want a technology gadget. We don't want a technology enabler. We don't want a technology showpiece either. Okay. And what happened, what needed to be done is that not only was it going to be completely based on non technology, we needed to actually bring back some of the important things that had to be facing the human mind, the human psychology. We had to bring back one of the key enablers of what we call the human factor, which is the human interaction. The feedback that we got from most of those labs from the length and the breadth of the country was that no, we did not want to speak to a chatbot. The chatbot was not really going to be what is important for us to talk to. So, what was it? What was missing? Some of the staff called us up in the head office and they said, Ma'am, I had a query about the Maternity Act. I had a query. I wanted to lodge a protest because my boss is harassing me. I don't want to look at a little algorithm, okay, in the corner of my laptop or desktop. I don't want to speak to a programmed chatbot, which may or may not even be able to answer some of my worries or take care of some of the pain that I'm going through. I need a flesh and blood HR department or HR rep who will, at the first instant, pick up the phone and should be able to understand what is the problem that I'm talking about. And that was an eye opener because it was obvious that we could write a script for a chatbot which could possibly enable a chatbot to respond to any query which is there in the HR manual around any HR processes. But we could only do it to the first level or second level or the third level. But was it humanly possible to activate a chatbot like a human mind, where irrespective of what was asked, the conversation could go tangential to any level and a chatbot would fail to be able to make any sense or answer to it? So the whole thing, therefore, came back on us. And what we realized at the end of the day is that till you have the human face of the human resource alive and kicking, not much in terms of people angst, not much in terms of people orientation, not much in place of employee wellness can actually be in place without really having the touch feel aspect of HR. So when we talk of wellness, what are we really talking about? We're talking about this post pandemic priority, which has emerged because, as you are all aware, tremendous amount of problems have happened because of the pandemic. People have lost lives. Therefore, taking away the single breadwinner of families. People have lost jobs overnight. Pink slips have been administered and they continue to be administered even today. I just read and I was shocked. Please do look at one of these articles that have come out on LinkedIn yesterday about an organization which gave out a pink slip to 900 people, 900 of their low end staff over a Zoom call. Can you believe that? What kind of an HR department does that particular company have? How could how could an organization do this to people even in the worst of their moments? Do you really take away somebody's job over a call? Have we been reduced to this? And this is what technology is making us do? That's my question before you. That's my proposition before you, and that is why I thought it was important to raise this question, that is technology today in a position to enable human resource to do good, or is it giving us ideas about how to cut short processes and bring about all the nefarious practices that HR can get down to if they decide to go ahead with such policies? Food for thought. But it was important that I mentioned this because I had goosebumps reading that article. I could not stop feeling absolutely, angry beyond contention. Imagine if you were there on the other side of the Zoom call. And they actually brought in named people who had been there in the company for 20 years, 25 years. But suddenly it was decided that they had outlived their utility. They can't be multi skilled. They therefore cannot fit into any beautiful new age colored photograph. They did not fit in. I would think rather than fitting in, we have to nurture human resource. That's the function of the HR department. The HR department plays one of the most crucial roles that you can have in any organization, which is balance between the management vision, continue to balance and deliver as per the management vision, and be the champion for people. It's the biggest tightrope walking that any function can have in any organization. Finance doesn't have to do that. It has limited people interactivity. It is best left dealing with balance sheets. Marketing doesn't have to do that. They are best left with their budgets and brand values and go to market strategies. They have nothing to do with people wellness. They have nothing to do with human psychology. When the chips are down and the human beings are being offled from the company, neither cries finance, nor cries marketing, nor does IT step in. Nobody has a word except to generally feel bad about the whole thing. But here we were there, and honestly, after seeing that, the whole concept of where do we take this function of HR? Do we make sure that we preserve and we nurture the human face despite all odds? Or are we going to become a puppet in the hands of technology? So much so that tomorrow any amount of technology can be thrown at me and given a charter to perform, which is true self, is nowhere close to human resource. That's my worry. And as the new age leaders of tomorrow, when each one of you gets into your space and chooses to at least evaluate well, I would suggest, please, this is one area you have to really do importantly. Mental well being is at a crisis point today. Stories of women abuse has reached a maximum limit. Till yesterday, even women at home, women who were careerist women, when they stayed at home, there was a certain amount of appreciation. There was a certain amount of feeling and emotional state that, oh, this person works so hard for the family, brings in all the goodies. Maybe we should, from our end, also do something to make sure that she remains happy. Instead of that, the kind of horror stories that I have been listening to, because today, when the woman is found at home, and the same woman goes out who used to go out, now doesn't have a place to go to because she's now under work from home. What is the perception that generally goes into the minds of the rest of the family members? That, oh, that's okay. She's having it easy. She's having it at home. What's the big deal? And since now she's at home, she might as well do the other part. And there are people in families who are taking advantage of the fact that childbearing ladies are made to work 14 to 16 hours in order to fulfill certain visions. Where do you think mental well being will be in those considerations? Okay, Then we move on to empathy and compassion. They are still the most sought after skills in HR people today. As I said a little while back, if you are not able to nurture the human part of human resource, which is what you stand for, which is what I stand for, which is what this entire discussion is all about, then you are not capable of being in this department. Because you may be forgiven a lot of things while at HR, but some things don't ever change. And eh, that example that I gave you about the chatbots in a Saral Diagnostics and the reason why we had to quickly withdraw and we had to revisit the job descriptions of our HR business partners so that they would regularly visit even the outlying areas which originally they thought was not of importance. But now it was a charter, it was a mandate that they would occasionally visit every nook and corner in their own defined geography so that every person employed in the company from time to time knew what changes would have been in that particular area. It was important because only when you extended empathy and only when you showed your compassion, that's the reason that people turned around and still listened to you. And today, mm, I'm not just, I'm not just questioning whether empathy and compassion are good things to have. I'm only suggesting they are still pretty much the only best things to have. If you want to continue in HR, if you want to continue to do justice to the function, that's all right. But at the same time, if you feel that with technology, you need to probably look at how best to strike a balance. That is probably the order of the day. So, this presentation was primarily all about what do you do with the function of HR where empathy, compassion, agility, adaptability, your way of sinking in with people, your ways of showing a different kind that you are, all come together, okay, in our pursuit of not only creating best in class HR practices for the today's generation, for today's new look environment, for new workforce as part of the new workforce management, but you should also be ready to understand technology to that extent that they can actually enable you to perform HR better. With that, I'd like to come to an end to the structured part or this particular part of the presentation, where I thought it was important for us to highlight as to how do we really go about finding that balance, that very strong tightrope balance between what the traditional part of HR needs to still retain and refine for excellence in delivery going forward, and what are the few things which we need to change, which we need to look at in differently, primarily new skills, new areas, new look at delivery. How do you do that? So we will be talking about, we will be discussing more along these lines as we go along. There's a lot of thought that's happening today where people have grown up and people are talking about finding this balance very sweet before it becomes too much to handle. Now, at this point of time, I'd like to possibly take a break. I'd love to address any questions. I'd love to take any questions that you might have, any discussions, anything, any comments, any suggestions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mom, for an enriching session. Dear participants, it's time for question and answer session. If you have any questions or queries to ask, please post them in the comment box. Our speaker will be ready to answer to your questions. I repeat, dear participants, if you have any questions or queries to ask, please post them into the comment box.
I would also say that if not now, of course, I would love to have questions directed right away, because it's always better to do that when the session ends. But if at a later point of time, if there are any questions, suggestions that come to your mind, please feel free to take help from your coordinators, people like Niveda, excellent support that they give every time, and through them you could direct them to me, and I would be very happy to get back to you with solutions to those two.
Thank you, ma'am. Uh, Ma'am, as of now, there are no questions has been asked. So with this, it says it's very clear that the presentation was very, very clear and crystal.
I
Ma'am,
hope
with you.
that's the case. I hope that's the case, and I really would like to have feedback as to whether you found the session relevant in the current state. My only submission to all my HR practitioners is HR is not for everyone. HR is for the really tough people. Unlike a lot of people in the industry who feel that HR people are weak, or HR is for people who did not manage to do other things, let me just change that perception. HR is something people are scared for, because delving deep into human psychology, finding out customized solutions every time, making sure that you're right there when trouble strikes the company, and you are there as the right hand of the CEO in most cases, doling out suggestions, doling out customized solutions, and standing there rock solid when everybody else flees the situation, is not for the faint hearted. So never think that you are not good enough. I would say that any HR team needs to be packed in the back for the kind of background support, for the kind of continuous dedication, complete passion with which they approach their work. And cheers to each one of them, because the kind of fortitude and the kind of risk taking ability and the kind of adaptability and agility that they all demonstrate is absolutely praiseworthy. Thank you, Dr. Niveda.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for enlightening all of us here. Um, may I now request Ms. Ramya to take over the session? Over to you, Ms. Ramya.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for delivering a wonderful and informative session. Your session was highly successful in that sense that reached all the participants effectively and helped them to understand more on technology-enabled world. At this happy moment, we would like to present our appreciation letter to the chief guest. I request Mrs. Niveta Raja to display the appreciation letter. Over to you, madam.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor, and I feel privileged to have been part of this August gathering. Thank you once again.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Gratitude is the farthest wisdom, whispering from the soul. With that being said, I deem it honor and privilege to propose vote of thanks on behalf of the Department of Human Resource Management for this one-day nation-level webinar on keeping the human in human resource alive in a technology-enabled world. Heartfelt thanks to our management and to our Honorable President Engineer A.C.S. Alan Kumar and all other executives for rendering the support for conducting various programs. A special thanks to our eminent speaker for the day, Mrs. Debjani Roy, for his wonderful and valuable endorsing session related to technology.
Excuse me, ma'am. Sorry for the interruption. Ma'am, I think there is a disturbance from your end. Can you please check that?
Sure, ma'am, sure. Okay, ma'am.
Thank you,
Now
ma'am.
it is okay. Okay. A special thanks to our eminent speaker of the day, Ms. Debjani Roy, for his wonderful and valuable enriching session related to technology. It was an eye opener for all us to make know about technology-enabled world. Thank you so much, madam, for your presence and for sharing informative information. Hearty thanks to our Joint Registrar, respected Deans Dr. A.R. Arnachalam Academic and Dr. K. Sendal Kumar Administration for their continuous support in conducting various programs. It's my honor to thank our HOD Dr. R. Jayam for providing me opportunity to deliver the vote of thanks. Special thanks to our energetic participants for your presence and continuous support. It's my privilege to thank Madam Nimita Razit for introducing our chief guest. It was a stunning profile. Last but not least, my heartfelt thanks to Mr. Ganesh Babu and Ms. Niveta Rajat for their technical support, and I thank all others who have supported in all the ways. Be thankful for what you have, and you will end up having more. With this quote, I finishing my vote of thanks. Thank you. Dear participants, the feedback cum assessment form is available in the YouTube comment section. You are requested to complete and submit the form before today 6 p.m. Later, the form will be deactivated. The e-certificate participation will be sent to register email immediately. We have come to an end of the program. Hope everyone has gained knowledge. With the satisfaction of presenting good webinar, we wish to sign off and meet you all in the next program. Don't forget to submit your feedback form and subscribe our YouTube channel Dr.M.G.R University Phased Digital Learning, and also follow our department Instagram Dr.M.G.R HRM 2019, Facebook Dr.M.G.R HRM, Twitter Dr.M.G.R HRM 2019 for further updates of the programs and videos. Thank you.
Dr.M.G.R Educational and Research Institute, University, Mother